Norwich celebrated its biggest ever Pride event at the weekend. But is our city a safe and welcoming place for the LGBT community all year round? Good evening. The city was a sea of rainbows on Saturday for the 9th Norwich Pride event that celebrates the lesbian, gay and bisexual and trans communities. And it did take on an extra significance this week because it's 50 years since the first partial decriminalisation of homosexuality. But when the parade's finished and the flags are put away, what is life like for the LGBT community for the rest of the year? I'll introduce our panel in a moment. But first, let's catch up on the events and the colour of Saturday.
The most colourful day in the Norwich calendar and the biggest pride the city's ever seen. It's the 9th year for the day that celebrates the lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgender communities and is thought to be the best attended so far.
About people feeling welcome and feeling as though they fit in and as though whatever differences there are, they're not a problem, that people live together, they enjoy each other's company and they get on with each other. It should be like this every day, and that's why I think when anything happens in Norwich that challenges that, it's so shocking, because we're simply not used to it. It's not Norwich.
Amongst the flags and the party spirit, an extra significance. It's 50 years since a huge milestone, a first partial decriminalisation of homosexuality. It was a day where the city truly showed its support. From flags proudly flying to the police being far more than just the boys in blue.
So is Norfolk a safe and supportive place for the LGBT community all year round? Joining me on the panel to talk about this is Julie Innes, who's the Diversity and Equalities Manager for Norfolk Police, and Mark Gracie from the Pride Council in Norwich. Also with us this evening is Chris Moore, who's the founder of Norwich Mature Gay Community Group, and Alison Thomas, who's the Deputy Leader of the County Council and their lead on equalities. So let's start, if I can, with you, Mark Gracie. Really excited, good weekend, everyone had a good time.
Brilliant.
But is it all like that all year round?
It's not a party all year round, but you can be proud all year round. The Pride is sort of the build-up of the whole year and everything that's gone on. There are events all the time, but it's not all about events.
OK. Chris Moore, how have you noticed things change over the years? You know, I guess we wouldn't have seen something like that 10, 20, 30 years ago.
No, we wouldn't. And I'd tell you two things that really struck me at Pride on Saturday. One was the number of young people who were there who were extremely confident, articulate and at ease, or apparently at ease with their sexuality. And I think back to how I was at that age, that was not me at all. The other thing that struck me was the number of people who would not have identified as being LGBT but were there to support and to celebrate, and often because of a connection with an LGBT person. You know, in my day, your relatives, your friends, your workmates would not have been on the streets supporting. That would have been remarkable. Was it very different for you in that time? What was it like? You hid a lot, you know, large and very significant part of your life you hid away. You know, when I was at college, I didn't know anyone else who was gay. I knew I was gay. There obviously were other people who were gay. I didn't know anyone there. When I was working, you know, Monday mornings, work time, catching up on what you did at the weekend, you had to almost talk in code or hide or make, you know, oblique references to what you'd done so that people didn't suspect or make connections. Alison Thomas, how have things changed, you know, since you've been involved in local government? Would we have seen the Pride flag 20 years ago over the County Council, do you think?
Well, I wasn't there 20 years ago, but certainly, no, I'm not sure that we would have done. And I was very pleased that the County Council is able to join with the rest of the Norwich community and say this is important that we all support the Pride Day, but also that we all support equality for the LGBT community across the whole year.
And what changes have you noticed?
364 days. Well, I think there's certainly a greater awareness. Certainly within the council itself, we do our best to support staff and to ensure that if they have issues and they feel that their sexuality is something that is causing concern or causing problems for them, that they bring that forward and that we support them, but also that we encourage positive role models within the council to be open about their sexuality, so that it encourages others to feel that they can do the same.
Okay, let's ask Julie Innes. I mean, you work for Norfolk Police. How are things looking in terms of hate crime and those kind of issues? Is it getting better? Is it getting worse?
In terms of homophobic and transphobic hate crime, it's been pretty constant over the last few years. However, the caveat to that is that it's vastly underreported, and we know it's vastly underreported. So what do we do to make people feel comfortable to come and talk to us? And Pride on Saturday was a prime example, because you had police officers dancing in the crowd. And I can't tell you what message that sends out. You have our chief officers there, so both deputy chief constables were leading the parade. You had openly gay officers, they were dancing with people, they were approached. Well, that police car is just a godsend. You know, people love it. So for us, it's about encouraging people that you can come and tell us this stuff now.
How do we know, though, it's underreported, and why does that happen, do you think?
I think it happens for lots of reasons. I think you made a really good point just now, Chris, about people living in stealth and not being able to be out, so they can't come and tell us. Because what if we get a successful prosecution? They have to go to court, and then it's all in the papers, isn't it? And I really like what you said about the young people, because that is true. I think attitudes are changing. However, I think there is still a vast number of people that don't feel confident to come and report, because they're frightened of repercussions, they're frightened of being outed, they're frightened of it getting into the papers. So there's all sorts of reasons, and it's very difficult to try and change that in someone's mindset if they're really frightened.
Do you think it's a generational thing, where I know that the younger generation, I think, from dealing with them, are much more forward and much more open and prepared to come in and complain, and if somebody is bullying them or if somebody is tormenting them, they're prepared to discuss it and say. Whereas people of my generation and Chris's generation have a different backstory, and maybe then don't feel as confident to come forward, and as you say, the repercussions
I think
hold
so.
them back.
Definitely. I think young people, there's two things when you talk to young people. They are far more confident, is what you were saying about, you know, it's not uncommon at Pride to see young people of 12, 13, 14 holding hands with their boyfriend, girlfriend, trans children. So it's not uncommon to see that, but it's still very difficult for them to come and think, I'm a child, I've got to walk into a police station, I've got to tell them this has happened to me, and they're going to look at me and think, you're 12. And that's what they think. They think we won't believe them.
But I think young people are less tolerant of prejudice too.
They are.
Absolutely.
That's certainly with my own children, when I've been to Pride before, they're going to support friends of theirs rather than because they're part of the LGBT community themselves. And they're very accepting of it, and they're very quick to correct if people say something that's not appropriate.
Right,
they will step in straight away.
And I think straight allies have a really important role to play in all of this, because, you know, why should LGBT equality just be left to LGBT people? It's the same with race equality. Why should black people be the only people responsible for race equality? It's all our business, and we all have a part to play in it. So straight allies coming out on the streets and supporting their gay and trans friends, family, colleagues, sends out a powerful message.
It also means you get a crossover, where people may not operate in a circle. Some gay people they're not closeted, but they are surrounded by other gay people. And if you do have your straight allies, they're actually spreading a positive message as well, so that helps too.
Okay, well, let's hear from Di Cunningham from Proud Canaries. They're the official Norwich City LGBT fan group. We asked her about the kind of problems that she's seen over the years.
Interestingly, a couple of times on my way to football, wearing my Norwich City shirt, I've had things shouted at me, and I think, you know, which is homophobic abuse. Essentially, I think it was just because I was a woman going to a football match. It just throw you when somebody just shouts at you in the street, and the temptation is just to shout back. I think on the second occasion I didn't shout back. The advice is not to, but it's just so difficult being singled out as different, and that was some time ago, and nothing's happened recently, so things are improving.
Di Cunningham there. I mean, football is an obvious area, isn't it? There are not many out football players in England. Do you think there are other areas where there's inequality exists? And Chris, what do you think?
Other areas where inequality exists. I think football is obviously the one that most people talk about. You've got industry. I mean, the chair of BP didn't feel for his whole career that he could come out. That's true.
So it happens right across the board. Thankfully now in politics, I think we've got a higher proportion of LGBT MPs than we actually have in the general population. So that's balancing out. But what you were saying about football, the Canaries invited myself and my husband to attend a match this year, my first ever football match, and at half-time asked us to walk around the pitch with our banner, wearing our Pride t-shirts, and we were so nervous. We thought, what are we going to walk into here? Because you hear all the stories, don't you, about football fans and everything. And from the minute we set foot on the pitch, there was just cheers and applause, and it was just so it was really, I don't know, reassuring, and you think the message is reaching even the sports arena, which before it wasn't.
I did talk about problems that she'd had, though, people saying things to her. Is that something that any of you have experienced as well? People kind of negative comments on the streets, things like that?
Last month, we were out at the weekend, and it was quite obvious that myself and my husband were together. And a gentleman who would have been probably in his 60s made a comment. I won't repeat the comment, but it was an offensive comment. And I was amazed, because you were saying about young people. This teenage couple were walking along, and the girl went over and said, "That is completely unacceptable. Where do you get off talking to people like that?" And she was defending me, which I was it was just so reassuring. And when the young generation are carrying the mantle, and they're doing a wonderful job of it.
Okay. All right, lovely. Thank you very much. Stay with us after the break. We'll be talking more about whether Norwich has Pride all year round and what can be done to support the LGBT community in Norfolk. Do stay with us. Welcome back. Norwich celebrated its biggest ever Pride event at the weekend. So tonight we're asking, does our city have Pride all year round? Is it a welcoming and supportive place to be part of the LGBT community? On the panel tonight, Diversity and Equality Manager for Norfolk Police, Julie Innes, and Mark Gracie from the Pride Council. Also with us this evening, Chris Moore, the founder of Norwich Mature Gay Community Group, and the Deputy Leader of Norfolk County Council, Alison Thomas. We'll hear more from the panel in a moment. But first, we were out and about during Pride, asking people if they think that things are changing for the better.
It's a long way to being accepted every day, whereas one day a year of Pride is great. But if people felt that happy and that secure that they weren't going to get hassled, it'd be great if you that would be every day. It's just the norm. But until that day, there'll still be Pride events and stuff like that.
It's more commonplace to see gay relationships on TV. The transgender movement is much more public now. I think people are becoming more aware.
Prejudice is about lack of education and ignorance, and I think we really need to educate from the bottom up. And I think involving young people in events like this is great, because it shows them that there is no stigma attached to it.
So lots of voices from Pride there. Let's start with Alison Thomas. What kind of things can you do in local government to sort of help and support the LGBT community and boost equality?
Well, in Norfolk, one of the things we've been doing in recent years is encouraging more LGBT people to come forward as adopters. Although the legislation changed some years ago, certainly my experience has been that we hadn't seen same-sex couples coming forward, and I'm really pleased to see that actually the numbers are increasing. And last year we placed 7 children with adoptive families that were from the LGBT community, and that's wonderful. And they had wonderful skills, and I think it just dispelled the prejudice that you have to be a man and a woman to be parents, because the people that came forward, I know, will provide really wonderful, loving homes for the children that have been fortunate enough to be placed with them.
And one of the people in that video also talked about education. Is that going to be key, do you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in the schools now. We were very lucky this year to have a group of young people from school that led our parade, and there is support in schools. There's counselling in schools now if children want to come out, and again, straight allies. We've got groups in the schools where it's not just LGBT children that are coming forward, it's people that will protect them and support them. I remember when I was at school, I had a boy that would save me if anybody was beating me up, and it's a progression from that, where it's actually organised, the teachers are there, the support's there, and I think it means they're more secure and can talk to people.
But we've talked about that generational thing. I mean, is there any sort of pushback or resistance from the parents or the grandparents? Do we come across any issues like that?
I think sometimes from a policing point of view, because we've got safer schools officers in schools that get involved in any sorts of hate crime or just general ASB or kids being kids.
Antisocial behaviour.
Sorry, antisocial behaviour. And sometimes, you know, the parents just absolutely refuse, no, not my child isn't like that. So you do get parents that, and then when you present them with the evidence, they're like, wow, don't know where that's come from. So that can be a problem, which is why we have safer schools officers and we do lots of work. And there's people like Michelle Savage, who does loads of work in schools, who's absolutely fantastic. And I have to say a big shout out to her because she's brilliant. And it's through people like her, educating not only the schools but the parents as well as the children, that actually, you know, like the guy in the film said, going back to education is getting the message out there.
What would you like to see, Chris? What would you like to see change for the better?
I think for us as a group for older gay men particularly, one of the things that we found increasingly recently is older men coming out in their late 50s, 60s, having lived a heterosexual married life all through the difficult years that we've had. And I think they're a group that needs some particular support, and what we provide is social support and a network, a safe network for them, because they're moving away from one life and trying to start another without any of the sort of clues and you know, networks that we've all
built up over time. And what are the challenges that they're facing? What kind of things do they say to you?
They're often very isolated. Sometimes they've managed to you know, do things amicably with a family situation, but often there's baggage and there's issues to deal with that. They're often feeling very lonely and quite frightened and not really being sure. They've made this big step and come out, but then what? You know, and I think that we've been able to help and support some of them to show them that actually you can do that, you can build another life.
I mean, you've talked about your adoption, and that's obviously really important to the council, but, you know, council's facing a time of extreme financial pressure. Is there anything much you can do when, you know, money's so tight, or do we have to rely on the charitable sector to support the communities?
Well, I think in a way what we should be doing, though, is treating all of our residents equally and actually not distinguishing because of for whatever reason they are thought to be different. So we've got to provide services for everybody, and they should be services that those people need. And if that means a specific service for the LGBT community, then fine, but it might also be a specific service for a disabled person. So my personal view is that we should be providing what people need, and their particular persuasion or their particular community is irrelevant.
Okay.
Their need is what's important.
So what are, okay, thank you. What other sort of changes are needed next to see true equality in society? We've been talking to Davis Makayela. He's an author and an interfaith preacher who supports gay rights.
I think the government made a mistake for giving the church the triple lock, where they cannot accept that same-sex couple will be married in the church. Same-sex couples who are religious should be able to be married in their church or in their place of worship. This is something we are beginning to raise in Parliament, we are beginning to raise with the government, and it's another battle that we need to fight, and we will win.
Okay, so another issue there, and the church are not here today, so I don't want to get too much into the religious issues, but what areas of life would you like to see change for the better, where perhaps equality is not completely there?
It's difficult to find specifics because it's become more subtle. If you look at some of the videos that are on social media that carry a live stream of comments, you'll see brilliant, had a lovely day, fantastic, it was great, and the next thing you'll see is, when are we getting straight pride? And comments like that, and you realise then that there's an awful lot of people out there that don't get it, that don't understand. So it's education. It's trying to teach people that there is nothing different or strange here. This is just an alternative lifestyle which doesn't affect them, doesn't impact them. Nobody's asking for better treatment. We're asking for equality and equal treatment.
Absolutely.
Where is the equality still that you see in your? I mean, where does that equality still exist? The lack of equality still existing.
In terms of hate crime, or well, Yeah, I mean, when we look at the hate crime as a whole across the county, we're really lucky in Norfolk that statistically we're one of the safest places in the country to live. So for the whole of the county, we only get about 1,100 a year. And certain things will affect that. I don't want to get too political, but Brexit did have an impact on the hate crime figures. So, but again, it goes back to what the guys are saying. It's all about education and getting the messages out there. True equality will only exist when everyone, as Mark just said, gets it. So it's sort of one of those questions you can't really answer because it relies on other people to understand it. You don't have to like it. You don't have to go out and hug everyone who's gay, or you just have to think, well, okay, they're them, I'm me. Let's just live our lives in peace and harmony and get on with it. And it's picking your way through that, I think.
Does it depend where you live in the county? I mean, are some places more accepting than others? Is Norwich easier than out in the county? Is it Great Yarmouth perhaps, or is that just too difficult to say? Does it just depend on individuals?
I think it's difficult to say. I mean, we do cover. We have guys who come in from rural Norfolk, and I guess they might feel more isolated socially, but I'm not sure whether that's a gay thing or not. I mean, they might feel more isolated socially living there in any way. I think Norwich is a place that is always, it punches above its weight, and I think so that's why people tend to gravitate to Norwich.
Cities tend to be better as well.
Yeah.
You do have a more of an LGBT community in a city than you would have maybe in a smaller town. So you've got that aspect to it as well. But with Pride, people say, that we've got the day and the big events and things like that. Pride to me is also about being able to be honest with my neighbours. I remember the days, and so does Chris, when you had to pretend that it was a lodger you were living with, or it was a distant relation. You couldn't say, this is my partner or this is my husband. It's being able to go into the shops and do your shopping together. We used to get abuse if we were going around a supermarket together, doing our what do you want for your tea? And all of a sudden you've outed yourself. It's being able to do that. That's where Pride comes in.
And I mean, looking back now, we've talked a lot about the generation gap. If you were looking back at your younger self, what would you say to him about what, some advice perhaps?
I think I'd say to my younger self in all sorts of ways, don't be so cautious. But that's easy to say when you look back now. But I think I agree with Mark. I think it is in the everyday stuff. It's your neighbours, the people you're coming into contact with at work, and yet I think the thing that Pride can do is to bring that into a sharp focus on that one day a year, and then you can start to make connections, and the penny might start to drop throughout the rest of the year.
Okay, all right.
And I think the number of people who are becoming intolerant of the prejudice is going to increase and become the majority and the people who have prejudice will be in the minority, and eventually they will realise that actually they're probably wiser to keep quiet.
Okay,
keep their prejudice to themselves.
We are almost out of time, but I want to ask you all before we finish, what if there was one thing you could change to kind of improve things for the better, what would it be? Can I put you on the spot, Julie, and start over here?
More money.
More money.
Because to provide education, to put on seminars, to get people involved, you need to have a hook to get them in, and it all costs money. Money and people. So as Alison was saying earlier on about, cuts and all the rest of it, we're all facing that, aren't we, in the public sector? It's a nightmare trying to find the money to do stuff and the people to do stuff.
Okay.
So if I could have anything, it'd be more money and more people.
Okay, Mark, what would you like to see to make things change?
More debate. Let people talk, let them air their views, and do it sensibly and calmly, and an exchange of views is fine, and hopefully people at the end of it come out a little bit more informed than they went into it, and realise there's nothing to worry about.
Okay, well, I know we said we do need to talk more, but I'm really sorry, but we are out of time. Right. Thank you to all my guests, Julie, Mark and Chris and Alison. As ever, if you want to follow us on Twitter, you can. We're at Mustard this week, and you can watch back all our debates on the YouTube channel Norfolk Now. Good night.